Hi DIYers, I'm George from Alarmcom. Today we're going to be going over which communicators are compatible with the Simon XTi-5i. This is an Interlogix panel. The communicators that will work with this system are going to be the Interlogix 61048 communicators and the Alarm.com XT511 communicators. Now, if you're using the Interlogix 61048 communicators, you need to make sure that the actual firmware version on the communicator is running firmware version 191C. We're going to get into that in a second because there are a little bit of caveats and things that we can try to work if you guys are using a used communicator. So we're going to get into that after we talk about the Alarm.com communicators. All right. One important thing that will help you while you're watching this video is if you look in the description of this video, there's going to be an FAQ linked to the video that will have a list of all the communicators that I'm going to be going over and a list of all the firmware numbers and little caveats that I was talking about with the Interlogix 61048 communicators that will help you guys basically look back on in case you forgot or missed anything. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my tablet here. I'm going to pull up the FAQ so you guys can follow with me. So the first thing I want to go ahead and get into, if you guys click on that FAQ, is going to be the Alarm.com communicators. So these Alarm.com communicators are probably going to be the best for the Simon XTi-5i. You don't have to worry about the firmware version. Every single one of these Alarm.com communicators here will work with your Simon XTi-5i. Now the Alarm.com communicators, they come in two different kinds of communication paths. There's three that are cellular based only. So we have AT&T, Verizon, and we have TELUS. TELUS is if you're in Canada. Now, these communicators are going to be all LTE based. For those of you out there who are wondering why is LTE the only option available right now, or why do you guys only list LTE? Well, there are 3G, 4G, and CDMA communicators out there that you may have that may still be functioning. But as of October of 2019, Alarm.com put a stop to allowing 3G and 4G and CDMA activations because they're actually shutting down all of those cellular towers pretty soon. There is not an exact date yet, but they are going to be shutting down within the next 1 or 2 years. So it's just something to keep in mind as to why we recommend only LTE communicators and why in the FAQ you're only going to see LTE. So if you scroll down here, you're going to see that these Alarm.com communicators, we have an AT&T, Verizon, and a TELUS, and they're all LTE. They don't, like I said, they don't require any specific firmware version. They simply plug and play. You plug them into your system, they're good to go. Now, the dual path communicators, just something to keep in mind, dual path means it's running cellular and internet. Now, the internet is not Wi-Fi. So if you are going to get the dual path communicators, just make sure that you guys basically can run an Ethernet cable from your router to the actual device, which is going to be installed in the actual system itself. So wherever you guys have the system located, the communicator is going to be on the inside of the system, and you want to make sure that you can run an Ethernet cable from your router to that communicator. Now, dual path communicators are probably some of the best. The reason why is because it uses the internet as the primary because of the faster speeds usually, and then LTE is usually the backup communicator. So if the internet ever goes down, your cellular continues to work. Now, when you guys are getting these set up, just know that if you buy a dual path communicator and you're going with Alarm.com, you can't just use an internet path only. I know a lot of you are, well, but it's dual path. Alarm.com only has cellular based plans. So even though the communicator is a dual path communicator, it is still required to have the cellular activated as a backup. So if you're paying for the cellular, it might as well be activated. Next, I want to go ahead and get into the Interlogix 61048 series communicators. When I was telling you earlier about the firmware needing to be 191C, that is only for the Simon XTi-5i panel that the communicator has to be on that firmware version. If you guys have any older Simon XT panels, XTi and XTi-5, the normal ones, these Interlogix communicators should work without having to worry about the firmware version on the communicator. Now, To check the firmware on the communicator, you actually have to give the monitoring company or whatever company you're deciding to go with. If you want to check with us, we can actually get the serial number, the IMEI number, the MEID number, whatever unique identifier the communicator has. We can look up on Alarm.com and we can check the firmware from there. Now, the little caveats that I wanted to go ahead and talk about were, what if the panel isn't running firmware, or what if the communicator isn't running firmware version 191C? As if the communicator is below that, but if it's in between 189A, as you see here in the FAQ, to 191, there might still be a chance that we can activate it. The reason why is if you're using a older communicator that has any of the firmware version between 189A to 191, you can install it into your Simon XTi-5i. We can activate it from Alarm.com, and then we can actually push down the new firmware 191C to the communicator over the air. Now, that's only for the communicators that are in between 189A to 191. If it's below 189A, you can still install it into the Simon XTi-5 and we can still activate it, but it won't actually work. We won't be able to send the firmware version over the air. Alarm.com won't allow it. So this is something to keep in mind whenever you guys are shopping for communicators, like through Amazon or eBay. Whenever you guys are buying used communicators, something to keep in mind about the firmware version. You might get one that's really old and then you wouldn't be able to use it. All right. When you buy a communicator from us, Alarm Grid, we are selling the newer communicators, so you don't have to worry about getting an old style communicator when you buy from us. It's going to come with the latest firmware on the actual communicator itself. Now let's go ahead and get into the actual communicators for the Interlogix. For the ones that Interlogix makes. They only have cellular based communicators, so if you scroll down to the bottom of the FAQ, you're going to see they have an AT&T, Verizon, and a TELUS LTE. Again, all LTE communicators. We're not going to sell you something that cannot be activated right now. So that's why you're only going to see those. Now, if you guys have an Interlogix panel, they actually stopped manufacturing the systems, but this doesn't mean that your panel is obsolete. It can still be used. It can still be monitored. It's still a perfect functioning alarm system, and we will still be more than happy to monitor it for you and get it activated and support it. You guys just want to make sure that you're signing, or that you're getting a communicator for it so that it can be activated. And if you get any one of these communicators that we discussed that are in the FAQ, we should be able to activate it on any one of our Alarm.com plans. Now remember, as I said, Alarm.com only has cellular based plans. So when you guys are getting these communicators, make sure you're signing up for a plan that will include the cellular service. So what happens if your Simon XTi or Simon XTi-5, Simon XT, Simon XTi-5i panel stops working? The panel dies, the house gets struck by lightning, it fries your system, somebody breaks the panel. What can you do? Well, if you're planning on getting a new system, you don't actually have to replace all of your Interlogix sensors. There is a panel out there that will actually work with your existing sensors, and that's called the Qolsys Panel IQ2 or the Qolsys Panel IQ2 Plus. If you're getting the IQ2 Plus, if you just get the normal one that has a 319.5 megahertz receiver, the Interlogix sensors actually transmit 319.5 megahertz. So if you guys are looking for a new panel because yours stopped working, you can actually buy one of the Qolsys panels and you can still get it monitored with Alarm.com. These panels come with the cellular communicators built in, and if you want more information, you can also contact us as well. Now, if you guys have any other questions about the communicators for your Simon XTi-5i, if you guys have any other Simon XT Interlogix panels that you're looking at getting monitored and you need help finding a communicator for it, please feel free to send us an email to support@alarmgrid.com. If you found the video helpful, make sure you hit like underneath, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and hit the little bell icon so whenever we upload new content, you guys get notified. I'm George, and I'll see you guys next time.